Hello and welcome to the preparation of the textile manual. All the elements that you need are in front of you. We have the textile manual here. You also have the textile swatch kit. Inside that kit you will find all the elements that you need to prepare. You have 3 piles of fabrics according to different colors. You also have 3 different packages of fiber samples, again identified by different colors. You also have a bag of yarns. You also, included in the kit is a small magnifying lens to help identify fabrics. We're not going to be looking at it though during this video. Some other things that you need to prepare this kit include a permanent marker, like a Sharpie style, a pen for writing down some different information. You will need some way of placing the swatches, so a stapler, tape, usually single and double-sided is recommended. Some people prefer using a glue stick or liquid glue. You will also need a staple remover to remove the staples from the fiber bags. And last, you'll also need a pair of scissors to cut some of the swatches. I'm just going to remove this for now. One other thing that you're going to need is the textile list, the list of all the different fibers and textiles that are found within your kit. This is going to be placed on Omnivox by your teacher. And you'll find all the different elements in here, the different fibers, yarns, and fabrics that are in the kit. So for now, we're just going to take a look at this list to start. On this list, you will find all the information that you need according to different fibers. For example, in this first part, you have the fiber section, section 2, in the yellow, orange, and green group. Just a bit more focus here. You can see it a bit better. So the fibers are arranged. The second part, also section 3, is the yarns. That's in the bag. And then the blend section is section 4. And then the fabrics. These are all the different fabrics in 3 different packages. The red package, followed by the green package, and then finally with the purple package. So, if we take a look at this, the types of information you find here include the number of the fiber, in this case. We also have the list in order of presentation. The third column, you also have the color. The fourth column is the fiber content. The fifth column is the page in the manual. This is an important one to look at. And the last column shows you miscellaneous information that could be also helpful. So if we take a look at this again, especially we're going to be looking at the number of the fiber as well as the page that it goes on in the textile manual. So as we take a look at the information that's on the fiber section which starts on page 12. In fact, we'll turn the page to page 13, and that's when you see, according to the list, number 1 is on manual page 12. At the top of the page, you will find the fiber that we're talking about, and then on the left-hand side, you have where the fiber swatches, the bags, are going to be placed according to this list. So number 1 says carded cotton on page 13, and number 1 will be placed in the box. Number 2 says fox cotton on page 13, still on page 13, and number 3, combed Pima cotton. So we're just following the list according to what is on the page and the number of the fiber. So page 14, it would be the same thing. It would now be flax. On page 15, it would also be the other fibers. Number 5, hemp. Number 6, actually number 6, jute, is not available, so we're just going to cross it off the list for now. Number 7, you have another fiber there. Raimi, which is also on page 15, again following the list that you have in front of you. On page 16, we have 3 different fibers. You have number 8, number 9, and this one is a little bit different. Number 32, all the way a little bit at the further down. It's important to look at the list because sometimes the numbers do not necessarily follow, as is the case here with number 32, but the list is correct. If we look at the next page, on page 17, you have number 10 and 11. And 10 is camel hair, the down. Number 11 is camel hair, the darker color. Number 12 is alpaca at the bottom of the list. Again, follow along the list. On the following page, on page 18, you will find some other fibers. These ones are already placed, and you'll notice that again the order of the numbers don't necessarily follow on the page, but that's why it's very important to follow the list that you have in front of you, the textile list. For example, number 13 at the bottom is Angora. Number 14, 15, and 16 are different types of hairs as well. 14 is mohair, as is 15, and number 16 is cashmere. On the following page, we have number 17, which is in the middle of the page, not right away at the top. So again, follow the list because the numbers don't necessarily follow each other. And you'll see that number 17 is wild silk. It says it's a beige color. Number 18 is wild tussa silk, a gold color. So the colors sometimes are a bit subjective, but try to follow as much as possible. Number 19 at the top is cultivated silk, a nice sort of creamy, shiny, whitish color. So those are the silk fibers on page 19. If we turn, we also have on page 20, again, the fibers go on the left, and you'll have the name of the fiber at the top. Following the list on page 21, we have a bamboo sample, number 21. And then number 22 is soy, which is on page 22. So that's the end of the orange group. And then we follow along to the green group, number 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30, you'll notice it says spandex use half of coarse spun yarn in the yarn bag. So in fact, it's not actually in the green group. It's in a different bag. We will go and find that one after, but for now, we'll just put it aside. And you just continue on and finish with number 31, 32, and 33. 31 says it's used in section 3, page 33. So let's go to page 33. You'll take a look. And it's the only one at the top. So this particular one is in a different section, number 31 on page 33. And then you just continue like this. So finish all the way through the green group, as we said. So be sure to consult the list as you're doing this to make sure that the fiber bags correspond. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back and take a look at that first page on page 13 once again. And what we're going to do is we're going to identify the bags of that first yellow group. So if you take the yellow package, you'll notice the color. The best way to identify is the color. So for example, the one at the top is white and the one at the bottom, number 11, is dark brown. So that's how you place your bags. And then we're going to identify them. So you take your permanent marker and we're going to list numbers 1 through 11 with the permanent marker. But remember, you'll go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then number 6 we said is not available. So you're going to skip over number 6. So you identify the bags 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and then 8, 9, 10, 11. So once you've marked those bags, you can then go on to the orange group. Take the orange group and again start with number 12. Check to see which one. One is black and the last one is a honey colored. So we're going to start with the black one at the top. That is number 12. So again, this one would be the orange group from number 12 to number 22. This time we don't skip any of the numbers. It just goes 12 all the way through to 22. If by chance you're missing a bag, just let your teacher know. And the next group would be the green group. Green group, which starts with a white sample of corn on number 23 all the way to Kevlar, number 33 in yellow. That's how you would place it, following the numbers 23 all the way through. But this time you'll notice that number 30, spandex, we're going to skip that one. So from 23 to 33. Once that's completed, now you've identified all your fibers in the bags, and we're going to look at how they're actually placed in the textile manual. These bags are going to be placed on the left-hand side of these pages. I'm going to show you just a different presentation right now. There are many different ways you can present this. This is your textile manual, but this is just one example of how they can be placed. I'm just going to move this video over, the camera over, and so you can see the setup on the left-hand side, in this case of page 13. So for the fiber swatches that you have on page 13 for cotton, you'll notice that you have 3 fiber bags. On page 14 for linen, you have 1 bag. On page 15 for hemp, jute, and ramie, there are only 2 bags. We skipped over jute. That was the number 6 that we skipped over. On page 16 for wool, there are 3 bags. It could be that it's described as one color, but just pay attention because it might actually be a different color. Like in this case, it's a purple color, when on the list, some people might have white. On page 17 for the camel, alpaca, and llama, you have 3 swatches. On page 18, you have 4 swatches. You can stop the video at any time to go back and review to make sure that you have all of them. For the silk samples on page 19, you have 3 swatches. On page 20 for rayon, you have 1 swatch. On page 21, you have 3 swatches, 3 different bags. On page 22, you have 2 bags of soy and corn. On page 22. On page 23, you have 2 bags. On page 24, you have 1 bag at the top, that's polyester. On page 25, you have 3 bags of different fibers. And on page 26, we end up with the yarn section. We're going to come back to page 25 and look at the spandex yarn. If we take a look at the list, on the list number 30 in the green group, which was not there, we skipped over, it says spandex, use half of the core spun yarn in a yarn bag. So take your bag of yarns. Inside you will find a couple of other smaller bags. One of them, if you pull it out, it will be a small white thread. Or a little yarn. You'll take here, I'll show you over here so that you can see the contrast. So find this bag of yarn in the bigger bag of yarns, and what you're going to do is open it. You're going to pull out the yarn that's inside, and then once that's done, you're actually going to take it and cut it in half. It does say to cut in half and use the other half in another section. So we're going to cut it in half. We're going to put half of it very carefully on the table so that we don't forget it or lose it. The other half, we're going to put it back in the small bag. And then that sample is going to go on page 21. If we go back to page 21, you will see, oops, sorry, not page 21, I'm sorry, page 25, right in the middle, you'll see that we place it where it says the spandex core spun yarn. Now the other sample, rather than put it back in the bag, we're going to go place it immediately. So we're going to go see in the yarn section where it says core spun, it's number 40. It says on page 27, so nylon and spandex on page 27. So we're going to put the other half right away in the yarn section on page 27. So if you skip ahead to page 27, again, you can stop the video at any time if you need to catch up or if you need to review. So on page 27, you'll see that the third from the bottom does in fact say core spun, and it does say nylon and spandex. So you can just take a piece of tape and place the yarn on that page, on page 27. In fact, we're going to now look at that finishes our section of fibers, and so we're going to now look at the section 3, which is the yarns, and we will take a look starting on page 27. So if we take a look, you can see the presentation here of the different yarns on page 27. So back to this yarn page on page 27, you have an entire bag of yarns that the best thing to do would be to take them out. And yes, you can follow the list, although sometimes the colors are a bit subjective. But I think what is best is if you just pause the video and then find the yarns that are placed on page 27. In this case, in this yarn section, on page 27, you will have actually the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the 6th yarn, which we've already placed. Don't worry about the fabric at the bottom, but those first 5 or 6 yarns, if you place them on the page, along with this one that we've already placed, and how you place it, if you want to use single-sided tape, if you want to do it in one length or double it, really, it's up to you. We'll place the fabrics after. On page 28, forget those 2 fabrics for now, but you'll see that there are 4 yarn samples at the bottom. And again, you can read the description on the list that is in Omnivox, and it will correspond to the different fibers, but it's just easier sometimes to visualize it here, as you can see it on page 28. Again, you can stop the video at any moment to go back and pull out the right yarn sample for these pages. On page 29, you have a page that is complete, starting with the one at the top, which is a chenille, like a velvety yarn, all the way to the bottom, which is an eyelash yarn. I will remind you that the one at the top, the second one, is actually a burgundy color with little flecks of color. There are 2 that look similar. You'll see the next one after. On page 30, again, you have, we skip the first one. It's a fabric. We'll find it after. But the rest of them are all these different yarn swatches. Again, look for the description and try to match it, or just pause the video and then you'll be able to find the yarn that corresponds to the different section. There's one yarn also that goes into the blend section, and that one we've already placed the fiber bag, but you can go place the yarn on page 34. This is the one that has little shiny sequins in it, so it's similar to the other yarn. After that, on page 35, we have section 5, which is the fabric section. So now you've got a couple of yarns that are left over, and we're going to go place those where they belong on the different fiber pages, starting back on page 13. So back to the fiber section on page 13, you will find 2 yarns at the bottom of cotton. So you have your fibers, your fabrics eventually, and then 2 yarns at the bottom of page 13. On page 14, you will find 1 yarn. We place 1 yarn on page 14, a bright yellow, as you can see on page 14. On page 15, there are no yarns. On page 16, you have a red woolen yarn at the bottom that you place. You have your fibers and then your yarn. On page 17, there are no yarns. 18, 19, you have a recycled silk yarn. It's quite fuzzy and very uneven and very artisanal, multicolored as well. At the bottom of page 20, you have a multicolored yarn of rayon or viscose of different colors. So yours might be more orange and green or red or blue. On page 21, 22, nothing. But page 23, you have a nylon yarn. It's quite shiny and very smooth to the touch. It feels like a little rope. That's on the bottom of page 23. Page 24, there's nothing. Page 25, nothing. And so that ends the section of yarns. You shouldn't really have anything left. Actually, you might have one thing left in that bag. And it's not really a yarn, it's a fabric. It's a very narrow fabric called grosgrain, which goes on page 44. And it's placed in the vertical direction. All the fabric swatches are to be placed in the vertical direction. So that ends... and we put it there just because it's too small to put in the regular package of fabrics. So now that we've finished the fibers and yarns, we're going to go back and take a look at how the fiber bags are placed. So as mentioned before, when we're talking about placing the fiber bags, it's really, this is your book. This will be your presentation. If you're going to staple the bag in, just make sure that you can actually easily access the fiber. You can actually open it and touch the fiber to see what it feels like. But whether you place it horizontally or vertically, it's your book. So it's really up to you. You can use double-sided tape or you can staple it onto the page. It's up to you. Now we're going to go and take a look at some of the other fabrics according to the list here that fit into the yarn section. And these are fabrics starting at number 42 and 43, 44, etc. That are found in the yarn section. So we're going to go look at the fabric piles. In fact, if we go to page 28, it says number 42 is a monofilament, sheer with metallic and polyester, the fourth from the top of the red package on page 28. So follow along the list. Page number 42, it says find it on page 28. So if we move to page 28, you'll be able to see at the very top of page 28, there are two fabric swatches. So starting with the first one up at the top where it says monofilament. So this one, we will take the red package and we will go find this sample in the red package. When you take your fabric bundle, you'll notice that there's a definite top and bottom. And so we're going to start with the ones on the top. I would suggest that for these next few fabrics that you keep the elastic on. However, when you're actually placing the fabrics one after the other, it's much easier to work with, obviously, the elastic taken off. One of the things also to remember is that you should respect the direction of the fabric. Even though sometimes they fit better horizontally, this actually corresponds with the lengthwise grain of the fabric, which your teacher will discuss with you. So it's better to present it vertically instead of horizontally. The other thing you might notice as you're taking out your fabric swatches is you might end up with one fabric, but two examples of that one fabric. One of them might be a little bit thinner or a little bit smaller than the other one. So you're going to take the larger piece of fabric. This is usually when they're cutting and they come to the end of the roll, they place another one over top. So you might have a little bonus stripe of fabric. You can use it for any other application. But for this book, we're going to ask you to take the larger swatch, the largest swatch possible. So one of the other things you have to remember is really go by the list that you have in front of you. For example, this one says number 42, the monofilament, it says it is the fourth from the top of the red package. So as you go through, it could be that as you take out fabric swatches, the order obviously is no longer respected. But for now, for the first few, we will be following the list and it should correspond. So for example, if we look at this package, the fourth one from the list should be this multifilament. So this is the first one, second one, third one, and the fourth one. So you pull this out, and then you're going to go and place it. In this case, you're going to place it at the top of page 28 for the sample of monofilament. You can keep it full length, you can fold it in half, as long as you respect the direction of the fabric. The other one that we're going to look at as the actually second from the top of the red package, so it's this greenish pink one, and we're going to go and place it also on page 28. It is the second one down, and those are the two swatches, fabric swatches that you're going to go and place on page 28. So again, all you have to do is follow the list that you have in front of you, and it will tell you where to place these fabrics. So fabrics number 42 and 43 on page 28. If we continue and look at our the list, if we follow along, the next fabric says number 44 is unavailable. But 45 is a crepe yarn, so on page 27, and it says to cut it in half. So we'll take the green package, the third fabric in the green package, so 1, 2, and 3. So this is an amber kind of shiny fabric, and to cut it in half. So what you can do is actually just cut it in half in this package. You can take it out and cut it in half and place the other half back in, or you can just take your scissors and cut it crosswise. So we're going to cut it not to make two tall towers, but we're going to just cut it across, and you're just going to go and place it on page 28 at the bottom where it says crepe yarn. So if you're following the list, you'll notice the next one, textured multi-filament, we do not have number 46. And then 47 appears on page 28, which is the brown audio tape. And again, just follow the list and you'll see brown audio tape over here on page 28, and then it just keeps going. There are a couple of other fabrics to place first before we get to the fabric section, and those fabrics are going to be actually in the blends section, section 4, starting on page 32. So we're going to go and take a look at some of these different fabrics to be found from the red package starting on page 32. So in the blend section on page 32, it says intimate blend. You'll notice we've already got the fiber bag that we placed before, and we're looking for a red fabric that is 50 cotton, 50 polyester. On your list, it says number 74, the red fabric from the red package, the 6th from the top, but now it's not going to be 6th anymore. 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's the 4th one now because we've already pulled out 2. So you can take out that red sample and you're going to go and place it right there at the bottom of page 32. The next sample, it says a blue fabric, more like a teal colored fabric. And that is also your next fabric to be placed on page 32. That is the next one. In fact, the next 2 as well will follow on page 33. So you go and place this particular sample in the box where it says the blue fabric, polyester, acrylic, and spandex. On page, on the next page, so that was page 32. On page 33, we're going to go and place the remaining 2 fabrics that go in the blend section. You have a pale blue fabric and a creamy brown fabric. It says those were 8th and 9th from the top, so those are the next 2, and they just happen to be following each other. You'll have to notice also when you take a fabric swatch to make sure that you don't take an additional one, because sometimes they get stuck to the back. So make sure that it's just one sample of fabric that you take. So here's the blue one that corresponds with the silk and wool, and the beige one, which corresponds to 75% wool, 25% cotton. So that is number 76 and number 77 on page 33. Just go and place them, again, following the textile list that you have available in Omnivox. Okay, so now we've finished the sections of fibers, yarns, and also blends. And now we're going to go take a look at the next section, which is the fabrics. And we're going to start with the red package, as it says at the top. If you take a look at this list, you will find very specific information again. The first column tells you what is the name of the fabric. The second one, what color it is. The third one, what is the fiber content. And the last, the manual page, what page it goes on in your textile manual. And these are now in order, so it's fairly simple to just follow along, starting with the very first package and corresponding to the page that it goes on. So the first page, in fact, if we take that red package of fabrics, once again, this time we can take off the elastic and work with the entire package because it will follow, these fabrics are in order. So in fact, you don't need the elastic as long as you're placing them. So the first one is Dobie lining. It says a white one on page 64. In this case, I had two, so I'm going to take the nicer one. And I'm going to go find page 64. And on page 64, if we skip ahead, you will see that right at the top, it does say Dobie lining. So I'm just going to go and place my fabric swatch at the top. You can use double-sided tape. You can use a staple if you want. A double-sided tape makes it nice and cleaner, but just place it up at the top where it says Dobie lining. Okay, the next fabric on the list says white with silver. So go a couple of swatches through and you will find this white with kind of silver stripes on the back. This one, acetate and metallic, goes on page 61. So we'll go place it on page 61. And it will be on the front of the jacquard weave title page. So you just go and place that next sample on page 61. Again, if we're looking at the red package, the following fabric says microfiber, a cream twill, which is your polyester fabric, on page 24. So we'll go to page 24. And on page 24, we've already placed the polyester fiber, and now you can just go and place your microfiber creamy colored one at the top of page 24 like this. Again, respecting the vertical placement, how you place the swatch. Even though sometimes we said it'll look nicer horizontally, we're going to keep it vertical. The next one, you have one fabric left over in this pile that doesn't really fit in the fabric section. It actually is number 69 in the yarn section. It is a sheer fabric called eyelash. It goes on the page 30. So if you go to page 30 at the top, you can place this fabric swatch that has a couple of yarns in there that are similar to an eyelash yarn. So that one goes on page 30. And that should be it for all of the other fabrics that might not be placed in the fabric section. So now we're going to go look at the fabrics in the fabric section. So going back to the pile of fabrics in the red package, as you can see, this particular fabric, I've got a little bonus section here. So I'm just going to go and cut that off. If this happens to you, if you have a swatch that's a little bit crooked, you can always correct it, just slice off a little bit of that little extra. But this is going to be the first fabric called gauze on page 38. And all the fabrics that follow in the red package and then the subsequent green package and purple package, they're all going to follow each other. So if we take this first one again, go back to page 38, go back to the list, and it says gauze, the floral blue or a small little blue flower on page 38. You can see that right up at the top, it says gauze. And so that's where we're going to place our fabric swatch from that pile. The next one, and you have to be careful because some of the next ones are very thin and they tend to stick to each other. Just make sure that you have one fabric and not an extra little bonus one behind. So the second one actually is organza. Organza is very thin, a little crispy, but very, very thin fabric. And then you have another one underneath, which is also white, called organdy, which is much stiffer. They're both see-through. They both say white, but you'll see that they're both quite different. So organza is the next one on the list on page 38. And then organdy is the third one. That's the stiff one here that you're going to go place on page 38. So you have gauze, you have organza, you have organdy. And then the next one says voile, a lime green swatch. So here you can see the lime green swatch. So you can see that now the fabrics are in order on the page, on the same page. So we're going to place the voile with the lime green on page 38. On the next swatch, it says a white Ninon sample. This one says page 36. So we're actually going to go back 2 pages. We're going to go and place this particular fabric just 2 pages before where it says Ninon on the fabric weight page, Ninon, and you'll place it as the very first one, very sheer to lightweight fabric. And then if we follow along the list, the next one says a batiste, which is a white with black print on page 38. And so again, at the bottom, you'll see batiste. So you placed your fabric, your white with black print batiste on page 38. Now, on the next, on the list, the next one says lawn, a green stripe. This one says on page 13. So you're going to go back to, in this case, the fibers section, and we're going to go place this fabric swatch on page 13. So you've got fibers on one side, you've got fabrics on the other, and you've got yarns at the bottom as well. So this one will be placed where it says lawn on page 13. So after the lawn sample on page 13, the next one down says ripstop, a ripstop on page 23. So we're going to go to page 23 and place the next fabric swatch. That is a ripstop nylon on page 23. Following that is a percale, a red fabric on page 36. So go to page 36. So for the first couple of fabrics, there's still some back and forth, but here is percale on page 36, the red sample that corresponds to the second one, percale, on page 36. And so this is how you're going to basically complete the red package. You just follow it along, follow the list. Once you've done the red package, then you can then take the green package, take the elastic off the green package. Again, make sure that you're starting at the top, the cardboard at the back. The blue one starts at the top in this case. So the green package with Kasha on page 54 to start, and then finally your purple package. The purple package which starts with this burgundy sports mesh. Again, start at the top, the cardboard at the back, go all the way through and place the fabric swatches in order. You shouldn't have any problem. Your teacher will most probably do a troubleshooting session with you, maybe in week 3 or 4. To make sure that you've got all the fabrics. So thank you very much for following along. And good luck.